welcome to Storytime with me, Liz. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope everyone is keeping well. It's really important for us at Quaggy to know that everyone is keeping safe during these uncertain times. Now today I've chosen a story that has lots of dinosaurs in it because I know my friends love a good story about dinosaurs, and this certainly hits that brief. It's called Tyrannosaurus Drip, and it's written by Julia Donaldson, who is a very famous children's author. She's written The Gruffalo and Stickman and lots of other fabulous books, which no doubt we will read to you soon. And it's illustrated by David Roberts, and illustration means the person that did the drawings. And not only is it about dinosaurs, but I think this book is about kindness too. And it's also a rhyming story. So let's find out what happens in Tyrannosaurus Drip. In a swamp beside a river, where the land was thick with veg, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who roamed the water edge. And they hooted, "Up with rivers!" And they hooted, "Up with reeds!" And they hooted, "Up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds!" Now, across the rushy river, on a hill the other side, lived a mean Tyrannosaurus with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur!" But the two Tyrannosaurus, so grisly, mean and grim, couldn't catch the duck-billed dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered, "Down with water!" And they muttered, "Down with wet!" And they muttered, "What a shame that bridges aren't invented yet." Now, a little Compostaglius, but for short we'll call her Comp, found a duck-bill egg and stole it from a nest beside the swamp. And she swam with it, and she ran with it, and murmured, "Clever me," and "Won't the baby Comps be thrilled with duck-billed egg for tea?" She dropped the egg in horror and went running for her life from the mean Tyrannosaurus and his grim and grisly wife. And the duck-bill egg went rolling, and at last it came to rest in, of all unlikely places, the Tyrannosaurus' nest. Now the mother T had great big jaws and great big enormous legs, but her brain was rather little and she couldn't count her eggs. And she sang, "Hatch out, my terrors, with your scaly little tails, and your spiky little toothies, and your scary little nails." Out hatched babies 1 and 2, as perfect as could be. But Mother T was horrified by baby number 3. And she grumbled, "He looks weedy." And she grumbled, "He looks weak." And she grumbled, "What long arms. And look, his mouth is like a beak." Yes, they do look different, don't they? "Oh, he just needs feeding up," said Dad, and gave the babes some meat. The first 2 gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, "I'm really sorry." And he said, "I simply can't." And he said, "This meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant." "Plant?" yelled Mum in horror, and Dad said, "Get a grip." His sisters found a name for him, Tyrannosaurus Drip. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaurs!" Poor Tyrannosaurus Drip tried hard to sing along, but the others yelled, "You silly Drip, you've got the words all wrong." And he hooted, "Down with hunting!" And he hooted, "Down with war!" And he hooted, "Down with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaurs!" Drip's sisters soon grew big enough to hunt with Dad and Mum, but they turned on Drip and told him, "You're not fierce enough to come." And he cried, "They've gone without me." And he cried, "Ackle a day." And he cried, "This doesn't feel like home. I'm going to run away." And so he ran off to the river, where he saw a lovely sight. A herd of duck-billed dinosaurs all hooting with delight. And they hooted, up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. And he stood there on the bank. A sudden urge took hold of him, and he jumped into the water and discovered he could swim. And the duckbills came to greet him by the rushy river edge, and they hooted, "Nice to see you," and they hooted, "Have some veg." And Drip was delighted that they hadn't run away, ate bellyfuls of water weeds and played with them all day. Then he gazed into the river and he asked them, "Who, oh who, is that creature in the water?" And they laughed and said, "It's you." That night the lightning crackled and a storm blew down a tree, and it flew across the river, and the tees cried out, "Yippee!" And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur!" Drip's sisters stepped onto the bridge, but then they began to frown. For there in front of them stood Drip, who yelled, "Look out! Look down!" And they looked into the water, and they each let out a yelp, and one cried, "Water monsters!" and the other one cried, "Help!" Their mother scolded, "Nonsense!" and she joined them on the tree. Then she looked into the water and exclaimed, "Goodness gracious me!" The three of them stood trembling, and Dad said, "Get a grip. You all of you as drippy as Tyrannosaurus Drip." And he strode onto the bridge and scoffed, "I bet there's nothing there." Then he looked into the water and he jumped into the air. And how the duckbills hooted when he landed with a crash, and the tree bridge broke, and 4 Tyrannosauruses went splash! And spluttering and clinging to the branches of the tree, they went whooshing down a waterfall and all the way out to sea. And the duckbills hooted happily. They hooted, "Hip, hip, hooray for the heroic one and only duck-billed Drip. Hooray!" Ooh. So maybe if the Tyrannosaurus has been kind to their adopted brother, they might not have ended going down the river like that. Who knows? Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon. But until then, remember, stay safe, keep washing those hands, and keep smiling. Bye for now.